Hello everyone. So today we are inside, which we're probably, I still have a good chunk of tasks to do in the garden, but once it starts getting really cold, most of the videos are going to be inside. So today what I wanted to do is give you a tour of my houseplants, because once the garden goes to sleep for the season, that's when I stop ignoring my houseplants and hope that they aren't too offended that I barely paid them any attention during the growing season. But I think they actually prefer it, because most of the things I've killed have been from doing too much, usually too much water, than from not doing enough. So I actually have two main areas where I keep all my houseplants. One is this room, this living area, and then the other is my office. So I'm gonna do that in a separate video, but I am the type of person where if all of my plants aren't in the same area, I very often forget about them. Again though, they seem to prefer that, but I used to have a plant that was in our bedroom and I would just forget it completely. Like there would be a month that would go by and I was like, I should probably water that plant. So for me, it's much easier maintenance-wise to have them all close by each other. I also like the look of it. I'm trying not to fill, our entire home with plants, just part of my home with plants. And I do like the feeling of kind of going into this room because it feels like an escape, I don't know, from the real world. It almost feels like I've created a little nature area up here. I also had guests over recently, and something I never really thought about that they commented on was how good it smells up here, because there are so many plants and like dried flowers that I brought in from the garden. And I think I'm just so used to it that I don't recognize it, but apparently there's also a really nice smell up here. So I'm gonna walk you around. I'm gonna show you all of my houseplants that I have in this room. I also wanna share like how high or low maintenance they are. I'll show you my lighting so that you can kind of get an idea of what might work if you're looking for plants in your space. And I definitely have plans to get some more plants very soon. So let me go show you all of my houseplants. All right, first, let me show you the lighting that I have in here. Now, obviously I have the lights on right now, and even though we have these two of them are doors, one of them's a window, the size of the door. Even though we have these three, I think because, we're a city, we're surrounded by other buildings, it's not like a huge amount of light streams in here. These face east, so it does let in the morning light, but I'd say throughout most of the day, it is pretty dim in here, where if I am in here doing anything, I feel like I have to turn the lights on in here. There are also two tiny windows over here, and even though they're small, they do actually let in a good amount of light. You can see there's a brick wall just a few feet away, but direct sunlight will shine down into this corner for a little bit of the day, not too much. So I would say in here, I have like medium to low light, depending on how close the plants are to the window. And then the ones that need more light, I have to put up right against the window. Now, the last place that we lived, that we were renting, and where I started my houseplant and gardening addiction, that was kind of a similar setup to this, where there was a deck, there's only one deck off of big doors, and there might have even been a fourth. I can't remember, it was 3 kind of door size windows or 4, but it faced south. So that room was brightly lit for the majority of the day. I barely had to turn on lights, if ever, in there. And the sun was so bright that some of my plants that even like direct sunlight would get a little burnt on their leaves. So I couldn't put anything right up against the window. Whereas here, what I've noticed is some of the plants that worked great over there aren't quite as happy as they are here. So I've definitely had to kind of change around what plants I have. I even have some still that I'm holding on to that I might just get rid of because I don't think I have the best environment for it. And I would rather find plants that work in my environment instead of trying to force plants to work in here when they really don't want to. And I will show you some of those and how they look right now. But it's definitely been kind of a change and getting used to what's gonna work here for me. Also because, again, city living, there's not really much on either side, not a lot of space. So typically you'll only have sun from 2 directions. So ours is east on this side, west on this side, not a lot from south or north. So that's what we're working with. So if you do have lighting similar to mine, at least I can show you these plants that work. Now back there is maybe very bad at estimating measurements, but maybe it's like 20 feet. So like back there, the candelabra is maybe 20 feet away from these main doors. Again, just to give you kind of an idea of the size and the space. So now, let me tell you the specifics of the plants. I'll start over here, but this is a quick scan of this room. So first off is one of the two plants that started my addiction. This is the Aglaonema, and I believe it is Silver Bay is the variety. I got this in 2019. I went into Gethsemane. I was getting two plants for a space that had lower light because it only had one north window. And this is what they recommended, and it's done great. I've divided it, so I've created multiple plants with it already. I probably need to do that again soon, but I absolutely love the leaves on this plant and the pattern. Very low maintenance, I'd say. Again, it worked really well in a space that had pretty small windows with northern exposure. You can see there are new leaves starting to come off of it. It does produce blooms once in a while, but not too often. So this one could probably even use a pot up. I either pot up in size or I divide to kind of make it fit within the area that I have available. But I highly recommend this one. Again, easy maintenance. I probably water, well, I'd say in the summer, and it completely depends on the plant and also pot size as well, but I'd say most of my plants get watered once every 10 to 14 days. Some can go a little bit longer. Some in really small pots need it weekly. This one I'd say is probably like an average. So like every 10 to 14 days, maybe I can get away with like 2 to 3 weeks of water for this plant. But again, it is in a larger pot. Then back here, I have a plant stand that my aunt gave me from a thrift store that I love. And this is a Philodendron. Now I don't remember the exact variety, but obviously there's no variegation here on the leaves. But I love how bushy philodendrons get and how thick they are as they trail down the wall. Most of my plants are trailing plants, and I've realized I need more non-trailing plants because there are spaces where I'd like something that just goes upright, but most of what I have is trailing down. Now, speaking of trailing, this is probably my favorite part of everything that I have in here. I always forget when I actually first started this, but this is all propagated from other plants that I've purchased. So there are both pothos and philodendron vines. I think if I would go back and redo it, I would just stick with philodendron because those, when they trail, the leaves are a little bit closer, it looks a little thicker. So like here is a patch of philodendron versus the pothos over here. While the leaves are bigger and it grows longer, faster, it's not as thick. So you can still see the plastic flower box. I'm gonna say maybe I did this in early 2021. I got just a flower box on Amazon, filled it with soil, put in cuttings. They were just creeping over the flower box when I did it. And now here I've trimmed this multiple times and continued to propagate the vines from it. I cut it so that it stays above the couch because there's really no point in it growing below the couch. But this is one of my favorites. I'm hoping that soon I can get it to completely cover so you can't even see the white box at all. But I absolutely love it. And both philodendron and pothos have done well for me in either medium or low light spaces and incredibly low maintenance. So highly recommend starting with those if you are just kind of a beginner in the houseplant world. I, again, barely do anything to them and they just keep living, which is great. Swinging over then to this corner, in that corner kind of tucked away is my Cordyline. And although this is furthest away from the main doors, there is again this window here, so it does get a little bit of direct sunlight, I'd say like early afternoon. And this one I got, well, I like the way it looks, but I got it because it was the cheapest for the tallest plant I could find at the garden center. And I really wanted some height back here in this corner. This one I'd probably say needs an average amount of water. Again, pretty low maintenance. I really don't do much to it and it just keeps thriving. Oh, I also put in here the little flower stakes that were in the garden that I've now moved inside for the end of the season. So that's my Cordyline. Then here, I have my other favorite thing. This is the candelabra I got from a thrift store. I hot glued in test tubes. So I just measured the diameter of the candle openings and then got test tubes that were that same size. Hot glued, let it sit for 24 hours. This I've had for a couple years and the test tube has not fallen out, ever. In it are pothos propagations that I've just cut from one of the plants. And they are very root bound. I can either leave them in here, which I probably am gonna do for now, or at some point I can pot them up into soil. But I just thought that was a really pretty way to create a propagation station that looks like it's part of the decor. Because I really like to do that, being able to combine, you know, something that looks really pretty but is also really functional. Down in front of it is one of my probably lowest maintenance plants. So this is a ZZ plant. It does really well in low light conditions, which is why, again, it's kind of furthest away from the doors. I water this maybe once a month, so it's definitely on the lower side of watering requirements. And this I've had for a couple years now. It started in maybe like a 6 to 8 inch pot, and this is how big it's gotten. I can't remember if I've divided this one or not. I don't think I have, but I really like being able to have the plants that work well in my lower light areas so I can make sure I have greenery throughout the room. Before we switch to the other half of the room, let me show you one of my favorites. This is my Hoya carrii, and I got this, I think it was 2019 or 2020, and it was just a single heart, which I know is typically how they come, and you don't really know when you buy it if it is going to produce more hearts or not. So sometimes they stay as just one single heart, which I still think is pretty, and sometimes they grow. And I first started seeing a stem coming out of the soil maybe like 3 or 4 months into having it, and I was super excited. So this is about, well, how long ago was that? So 3 years of growth maybe, and well, maybe almost 4 at this point. It kind of puts out like a foot or two of growth at a time and then stops for a while, and then puts out growth and then stops for a while. This was the first time it bloomed for me, which it was really pretty, but then the blooms are really sticky. But I've just kind of recently redone the trellising system. I just got these wooden circles off Amazon, zip tied them together, and then I'm using twine to kind of shape the Hoya carrii. Let me take you in close. It's kind of growing every which way. Like this branch stopped growing and died, and then it put out another branch over here that's then growing up and around. So I'm excited just to see kind of how this turns out. But I mean, it's a plant with heart-shaped leaves. How can you not absolutely love it? Coming over now to this half of the room. So this is where my work table is. This is where all of my bookshelves are. And this is also where my grow light is over in the corner. So let's start here. This is the other of the 2 original plants I got. This is a snake plant, super low maintenance. So again, does well in low light conditions. It's actually in much brighter light right now than it was in the past. And this one I water maybe once every 2 or 3 months. They told me when I got this to only water when you like lift up. So I lift up the nursery container and I stick my hand or my finger into the drain hole at the bottom. And when that's dry, I water. I think if you have a hard time with snake plants, it's most likely that you're overwatering, not underwatering. This I'm pretty sure I've divided a couple times as well. And it's also in a pot I really like that I got from an antique store. Now, a plant that I also love, but I don't think really enjoys my environment as much anymore, are my string of hearts. So I have this just trailing off of the edge of the table here, and I just think it would like more direct light, even though it is still pretty thick, which is good. But down here you can kind of see how instead of growing down, it's definitely outreaching for light. Ideally this should be closer to the door, but I don't want to crowd the door with plants just to make it work versus having it in a place where it's not in the way of anything. So that's why I'm going back and forth on, do I even really have the right environment for string of hearts anymore? And that's hard because they are my favorite plant because again, it's a plant with heart-shaped leaves. Then I have just in the middle some dried flowers. Now before we head over to the bookshelves, let's go over here. I always forget the name of this one. It's Geoganthus ciliatus, I think is what it's called, but I got it because it has black leaves, which I love plants that have different colored foliage. I mean, obviously I love plants with green foliage as well. And I also thought it worked really nice with the pot. I actually had the pot for maybe a year and was swapping plants in and out, trying to find the one that fit best. And I think this works because it again grows a little bit upright, more like a mound, so I can see the pot, which is really pretty. and the black leaves complement the black on the pot. Then over here I have a parlor fern, which I just moved into this corner, so the lights here, it kind of misses getting light. I don't know if I'm gonna need to maybe put that in a bit more light, but it's working there for now. This was actually on my work table and probably will go back on my work table once I put all the dried flowers into my Christmas tree. Now onto my bookshelves. Here on the right is my pothos. This is, I think, where almost all of my propagations are from, is this one pothos. In fact, I've maybe only purchased one non-variegated pothos in my life, and now I have a bunch more. So this one here was just kind of trailing over the plant or over the pot when I got it, and then I've trimmed it so many times I can't even tell you. This was in my office before we painted, and it was trailing along the walls. It grows so fast. So if you want a plant that you can create something that's going to trail down something or across something, I definitely recommend the pothos. Now again, it's not going to be as thick as like this philodendron right next to it, but it's going to grow longer a lot faster. I also have another pothos. So this is another one I bought. This is is it Marble Queen? So it's variegated with white and green on the leaves. That one, I think I've only had for, I don't know, no, maybe it's been less than a year. Now this one for some reason isn't growing as quickly as the other one. I don't know if that's the variety or if it's just the placement, although it's pretty close to where this one is. So I love it. I love the variegation. Just in my experience, it doesn't grow quite as quickly. Then I have two African violets in a pot with no drainage, which I usually don't do, but I got this at a thrift store and really wanted to make it a planter, so I did. And I just water it very carefully, maybe again once every 2 weeks. And this has been since June, so they're still alive. June or July, I can't remember. Sometime in the summer, they are still alive. Then I have a Philodendron Brazil. This one has the variegation on the leaves with kind of yellow / lime green and then the darker green. This I've trimmed multiple times, propagated multiple times, but again, it has a more bushier form than the pothos. In this middle section, I think the only plant I have here is one of the Proven Winners H2O collection plants. This I got from the event in November, and it's a calathea. This is the only calathea I've been able to keep alive, and probably because I don't do much of anything. But you can see how happy it looks. There's not a lot of crispiness on the leaves, which I usually get, but it's sitting in just a jar of water. And I'll add water, just regular tap water, once every month or so, once every 2 months when I notice that it's getting low, and I don't do anything else. And it's really happy. So I'm excited that I finally have a calathea that looks pretty. Now over here in this corner is my grow light, which I don't have on during the summer, but I do have on once I need to bring my lemon tree inside. Now I did bring it inside a few weeks ago. It is starting to drop some leaves, which is normal, don't worry. It'll drop leaves when I move it in and then start putting out new growth probably within a month. So my lemon tree is there. I have a variegated string of pearls and another string of hearts that I'm kind of seeing how the string of hearts do underneath the grow light. And then I have another plant with some black foliage. This is a ZZ Raven. I just put it here. It doesn't need to be underneath a grow light, but I wanted a plant on this stool, and that's the plant that I had. So that's where it's gonna go. And again, it's been doing fine in that spot. Then over here, I have another philodendron. Again, I don't know the variety of this one, but it's non-variegated, trailing down my bookshelf over here. I just realized I forgot my little ivy plant, and I might have forgotten another random plant in here because that's how it goes when you start to get too many. But this is just an ivy plant. I really like the look of ivy, so I have it in a tiny little pot here, and I love it. I have had some issues with ivy in the past, but this spot seems to be working out really well for it. Now I think that is everything as far as my houseplants. I do have these curtain rods here with my dried flowers that we will be using in projects very soon, and I just love having this as, again, both a functional piece to dry my flowers and then also something that looks pretty in this room. So those are all of my houseplants in this room. I will do another one, probably not right away, but maybe in a couple weeks once I still get through the garden stuff. My office is painted pink, so I have all of my pink plants in there, as well as some non-pink plants that are in pink pots. So when I have a theme, I just run with it, but I'll put that in a separate video. And I feel like this happens whenever anyone first gets interested in houseplants. I got a lot at first, and I didn't even really think if they fit my space. I would just grab whatever I saw at the garden center, and it was more like I was just storing plants versus them kind of fitting into my home or into the decor, and it became a little bit overwhelming. So really for the last couple winters, because winter is usually when I propagate and get more houseplants because I'm stuck inside, I really haven't gotten any. I did a whole winter of a no-buy. I think I did propagate during the no-buy though. But now what I'm focused on is getting away from houseplants in smaller pots, because again, you water them more maintenance, and looking for larger plants, which will cost more, obviously. But if I get, let's say there's one large plant that's $100 versus me getting 5 more small plants that are $20, which I can easily do. But there are some areas in here where I would just like a little bit more height and have it, again, really fit in with the decor of the space. So I'm gonna be doing that this winter, looking to invest in some larger plants, but it also makes me nervous. I'm large but low maintenance, because I don't want something that requires a lot of maintenance, because then it's more likely I'm going to kill it. So something that is low maintenance, that is on the harder side to kill, is what I'll be looking for this winter. But those are all my houseplants in here. Let me know if you have any houseplant questions. I can definitely recommend some that I prefer for like when you're getting started. And also let me know what your favorite houseplant is. Is there something I should maybe add to my list? But again, I have more of a, despite having these giant windows, like a medium to low light situation in this room. So that's gonna be everything. Thank you so much for watching this houseplant tour, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.